it's like the only way to heal this society that is so dark and is so twisted and so broken is to forget about the past and the glories of war
Hmm.
and just let that go. Me, I've had so many names, old names that only the wind and the trees can pronounce. I am the mountain, the forest, and the earth. I am Additional Crew, your most humble servant, your highness. Welcome to Additional Crew. Today we bring you in 1944 Francoist Spain. An imaginative young girl meets a faun. Faun. I'm keep
Cell
thinking about the
phone
movie
back
itself.
from
Anyway,
2007.
yeah. Who tells her that she's a princess and that she must prove her worthiness by completing 3 dangerous tasks. I am, of course, talking about the now 20-year-old film, the 20th anniversary coming up later this year, Pan's Labyrinth, titled in its original language, El Laberinto del Fauno. I mispronounced that. I'm almost sure of it, but that's the name of it. Guillermo Del Toro made his true international statement with this film. Broke onto the scene despite he already had a few solid to amazing movies before this. However, this was the one that really brought him out into the daylight. One of my favorite little details in this one is that the opening weekend netted $600,000, but by the time it left box office worldwide, it had made almost 89 million. So one of those movies. Before we jump into the reasons for that, let me introduce the host. I'm Nick, and this might have been one of the first movies I could drive to, if not the very first movie I could drive to, coming out right after my 16th birthday. And with me is Willie, frequent of the pod and co-host of the Double Drinkers. What's going on, Willie?
What's going on, Nick? I when this movie came out, I technically could have drove in theory, but I was still about 10 years old, so not quite. Uh, I do remember when this movie came out. So my mom and I have enjoyed watching the Oscars together for years, and I believe that 2006, the 2007 show of the Academy Awards was the first year we watched it together. And that was the year that Pan's Labyrinth was up for 6 or 7 Oscars. And I remember seeing like clips of it, and I was always into like creepy, scary guys and like weird Tim Burton-esque creations when I was a kid. And I remember this movie stood out to me when we were watching the show because I really wanted to see it. And my mom looked into it and how violent it is, and she was like, "We'll have to wait on this one." Uh, and then 20 years went by, and I still have not seen it until yesterday. I don't know. It's been on my list for a really long time. Um, Actually, last night with my girlfriend, we watched the movie Primal Fear, which came out 10 years before Pan's Labyrinth. Had also been on my list for years. So yesterday was a big movie day for me. I got back-to-back uh, movies that I had not seen that have been on my list for a very long time.
Primal Fear is that Richard Gere, Edward Norton one, right?
Yeah, it was it was
Yeah, okay.
it was good. This I'm not gonna. There's a lot of spoilers. The second half was a lot better than the first half, and there was some pretty crazy shit that went down and some plot
I
twists.
have a really specific recommendation for anyone who wants to watch Primal Fear. If you do it with physical media, do not, I repeat, do not watch the full screen DVD version.
Huh,
That looks like garbage. It's worse than the VHS cut.
really?
Yeah, like that was one of those movies where because I found it at Goodwill and I watched it and I was like, whoa, this is bad. And then you
Hmm.
watch a regular widescreen or Blu-ray of it and it looks amazing. So the movie doesn't look bad. If you got it and you're like, wow, that movie looked like garbage, it's not the movie, it's the release.
The full
Also, I don't
screen.
know how many people watch this movie on DVD, so I don't really know what I'm talking about in 2026. But cool warning sign, because that was my first memory of that movie. I was like, whoa, you
Huh.
can't see anything in this film.
I could. There's a lot of scenes in it that are like kind of close ups to where I could see things being cut out. I watched it. It was on Paramount Plus. It was widescreen, I believe. Uh, huh.
Yeah, it was like laziness, but yeah, it has one of the coolest twists, and I know I hate it's kind of a spoiler in of
Yeah,
itself, but
I went my entire life without getting the twist at the very end, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Yeah, it was. This movie, Pan's
I,
Labyrinth, I also went in really not knowing, or I had expectations of what it would be about, and it was definitely subverted in a good way.
I think it does that. But before we dive into the film, I love to include this little spot, and I'll start it off. So don't you worry, we'll talk about it though. What's the finds of the weeks? Igor, can you take us to the finds of the weeks? Fine.
Yes, master.
See, I appreciate him because he listened to me, but the problem is that I said it wrong. It's not best finds of the week because we're not doing this every week. It's best new finds.
Oh,
Haha. I'm going to show off some stuff, and I'm standing up here for people who are listening. So I'm an idiot, and I went to a yard sale and found a whole bunch of intersectionalities of my youth, right? So and it's weird because if this yard sale didn't happen the way it did, none of this would work. But I found a guy selling children's clothes. I have children. I'm not buying them just for the fun of it. I do have kids, and these fit perfectly, and they fit from different time periods. So I've got a Utah Jazz Deron Williams jersey for a little kid that fits my young one. That's mine says Hatu on the screen, but it's Utah. Deron Williams, if you don't remember him, awesome point guard for the Utah Jazz.
what era? What era was he?
2003 through like 2008 feels right. It could be vaguely around there. Put on the spot, I'm not 100% sure. He was in ESPN and NBA 2K5, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And then I also found for my older child a Sacramento Kings jersey for Peja Stojakovic. And they're both little kids' jerseys. And it's just weird because those are like the two places and the two teams that I watched a lot.
Yeah.
And they fit both my kids.
That's interesting. Like, I guess, I mean, being West Coast, we're closer to Sacramento and Utah than other regions of the country, but no offense to your teams. Those are two very niche teams in the world of the NBA, and they have two kids' jerseys. That's interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of bandwagon Utah or Sacramento fans. Like, let's be real.
No, you won't.
I did get this one just for the laws of this last one I'll show. It's the Brooklyn Nets jersey, right? And it's Jeremy Lin.
Oh, I did not even know he played.
Sanity.
I did not even know he played with the Nets. Oh wait, I'm thinking of Yao Ming.
Yeah, no, Lin Sanity was a whole fun thing when I can't remember what year that was, but so yeah, I had to show that off because I spent way too much money on it, and it was just the weirdest thing because when you show up and you have kids the right age, and two of your favorite teams are there, and like you said, it's Utah and Sacramento. I don't see these things almost anywhere because who cares? You know, Utah's my favorite team, but I have a soft spot for Sacramento because they're hanging around. My friends are Sacramento Kings fans, and I feel for them desperately because that's got to be the most depressing thing to be.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had to show those off. Willie, do you have any finds?
You're going to see a lot more bandwagon Utah Jazz fans, I think, in the next couple of years. They're building something. I'll actually grab a couple books here. I went to Powell's. So if you don't know, Powell's Books is a bookstore in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sure most of our listeners have an idea of Powell's Books. But I had a family reunion a couple weekends ago, and I took my cousin, she's from Germany, and she visited Portland with my girlfriend and I for the day, and I took her to Powell's Books, and I went into Powell's not expecting to spend any money, so of course I spent $50. And similarly, I found the intersection of some of my recent interests. So I've been on a really big...
They're happening. It's happening right now.
It's happening. I've been on a really big Truman Capote kick lately, and I found this Complete Stories of Truman Capote. It's actually not the complete stories, but it's a bunch of short stories that I had previously read when I got them in different collections from the library, so now I own them. Also, his posthumous novel, Summer Crossing, which I have not read yet, so I'm excited to dive into that. I got a biography on Mike Ditka, which I have, as a Bears fan, I have to say...
I love the picture so much, man. I love that.
As a Bears fan, I have to say I'm not very well versed in his history and his life. Like, I know what he did on the Bears, but this actually, like, gets into it, so I'm excited to eventually read this. And then this is the ultimate nerd thing for me. This is the complete book of U.S. presidents, and it's thick. And what I really like about this, and this is a book that is exactly what I'm looking for in an encyclopedia. It goes through each president, and it's very easy to read. It kind of reads like a Wikipedia page, but it's very condensed with like what I'm interested in. So it goes through all their early lives broken down by like children, extramarital affairs. Police,
oh wow, it really hits it, huh?
all of it, like their entire presidential cabinet from each term and like the background of those people. And it's about like a dozen pages for each president, and I've already made it through about 14 of the presidents. So I made it probably like this much so far.
Decent dent,
yeah. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So that was my Powell's haul. my Powell's Hall last week.
I would love to see if that same company would ever release a modern one too, like updated again, because I feel like things have changed between like history keeping then and history keeping now with the alternative facts and everything that have popped up.
There's some things in here that I think have since been debunked. Like I was reading about Taft. I've jumped around a bit. I was reading about Taft getting stuck in the bathtub in the early 20th century, and apparently that's a myth. But
That didn't happen.
this it's disputed at the very least. But this writes it
Mm,
as it being fact. This was
see, this is what
published in 2007, so it's 20 years out of date.
see if you go to high school in the mid to early 2000s, I think you really should think about questioning everything you learned
Everything.
because it seems to be the truth. Every time I hear something, I'm like, "Yeah, I remember that we talked about that in school," and they're like, "No, it didn't happen." I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's better just to be safe and just assume everything's fake. That's how you should live your life.
Exactly. So that way you can't get surprised because otherwise you're begging for surprise each time. So I hope that meets your guys' intersectionality, the people who are listening. Okay, so we got Pan's Labyrinth, we've got sports, and we've got books about history of sports presidents, and Truman Capote. He's not a he's not a historian. He is a fiction writer. Yes.
He's a fiction writer. Yeah, he was one of the first like openly, proudly gay celebrities of the 50s and 60s. And for context of like what he writes about, he wrote In Cold Blood, which is one of the first ever true crime stories ever published, and he also wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's.
That's the thing that trips me up is the
Yeah.
true crime part. Because I remember watching the movie Capote, and I'm like, I don't remember if he's fiction or nonfiction. It's the true crime. I have never read any of his works though, so maybe this is
In Cold Blood is probably I just read it for the first time earlier this year, but it might be my favorite book I've ever read. I stayed up until five in the morning.
okay.
I stayed up till 5 in
Huge.
the morning finishing it.
I love it when that happens, man.
Yeah.
Like seriously, that's one of the wonderful things. Okay, let's talk about Pan's Labyrinth. Let's Igor, take us to the spoiler-free reviews of the film.
Yes, master.
See, Igor is still waking up too. So this is the part where we don't start with spoilers. So if you're listening and you haven't watched Pan's Labyrinth yet, this part's free. Don't worry. Well, I'll let you know when the spoilers are about to kick in. This is just kind of like a likes dislikes. I'm not going to give you a number rating or anything. But this is if you're watching Pan's Labyrinth or if you want to know if you should watch Pan's Labyrinth. Here are the things that I thought were positives. I thought it was an extremely well crafted at least photography and visual thematic wise. Guillermo Del Toro just has control of what is being shown on the screen, and you can tell, and it's all very, very unique and beautiful. It's a blended genres that is ambitious and pretty well thought out. It never leans too heavily one way or the other to make one part of it seem useless. Instead, both genres that are happening do come together, and they end up both mattering. It's a truly emotionally provocative film. You'll feel something at the end of this movie. I don't care who you are. You'll feel something. And then it's a story that feels like we've heard it before, but it also feels completely unique within film. And that's how I think you can find a really, truly good fantasy or fantastical film is it feels like something that you've heard before, and yet it is 100% unique. My two negatives are sometimes adventures a bit close to cheesy. I described it as being like falling into Sam Raimi territory.
That was a good, yeah.
And if you like Sam Raimi or not, but I think that this one's more earnest than that. And so when it falls into that, you're like, oh, I don't know. And then the complexity of characters, it's kind of thin. This is a frequent thing I've heard. This is maybe more of a neutral. If you're looking for like complexity of character decision making, that doesn't necessarily exist. However, this story may not require it either. So it's more of a neutral for me, but I do want to bring it up.
Yeah, that's fair. The positives for me, so first, I found the movie to be extremely beautiful and colorful. But what stood out about that to me is that it was both colorful and beautiful with scenes that had bright colors in fantastical sequences, and also in the darker scenes and disturbing and violent scenes where it was out of the fantasy world. I think of movies that like can pull off one side of a coin decently well, and then the darker scenes just look ugly and literally dark, like you can't even see what's going on. I feel like lighting in movies nowadays is just awful at times. Um, First example that pops into my head would be like Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, where there's some beautiful colors and sequences, but then the scenes without color just look like shit. But this movie was like consistently beautiful throughout. And also just really captivating set design, costume design, makeup. Um, Parts of the fantasy sequences reminded me of movies like Spirited Away, and obviously like it couldn't be as visually it didn't visually pop as much as an animated movie like that, but it did really well for a live action film, and it really did feel immersive and just you get really like like lost in the world, and it looks almost like it could be animated because it's so beautiful and stunning. Some of the set pieces, and like you said, it was a great blend of genres that somehow pulls it off, despite the whiplash of like whiplash of tonal inconsistencies at times. Obviously, like even in the fantasy sequences, there's some danger elements, but there's quite a bit of contrast between the fantasy scenes and the real world scenes. I think it pulls it off quite well tonally. I think it had really great performances across the board, especially the child actress who plays Ophelia and the performance of the actress who plays Mercedes. I agree with some of their kind of one-dimensional character tropes, but I think that the acting itself was not a it was just very positive. It wasn't neutral or bad. Like even though the characters perhaps maybe were, the acting itself was very consistent and uh, especially for the child actress to have to pull off some really uh, emotionally difficult scenes. I thought she did a great job. And I also agree the character development being a little bit thin, but I do think that one of my favorite parts of the movie was Captain Vidal is, I think, an all-timer movie villain. He is just so evil and just his presence is felt in every single scene, and I think that that really like makes his character stand out to me. Um, and then the last positive I have, I just want to mention a quote because it was awesome. Is when one of the characters says, "No, he won't. He won't even know your name." That was fucking awesome. Um, some negatives, I think the pacing in the middle drags a bit. Like I enjoyed the scenes, and I think it like did go back and forth quite well, but some of the scenes dragged on a bit long, and the pacing kind of felt like it was just like showing me instead of like progressing the plot along. It was just kind of happening. So that kind of took me out of it a bit at times. Um, and I agree. I think that the film feels a little cheesy at times, and also just a little bit too convenient. Like obviously it is a movie, and like certain things can happen unexpectedly that wouldn't happen in the real world. But some of the scenes were just like this is a little bit too convenient to be happening right now, and it felt like it was just existing to drive the plot along and didn't really feel earned. But apart from that, it was like those are like my only big negatives.
Okay. So now we're gonna get into spoilers after this. So if you heard that and you haven't watched the film, that either convinces you to watch it, come back afterwards, listen to the rest of this. You can join along in the discussion of Pan's Labyrinth. If you have already watched the film, don't worry, we're gonna get into the actual meat and potatoes. But after this, there are spoilers, so get ready for that. And with that said, Igor, take us into the human stuff of Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes, master.
Actually, I don't think we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes. We're gonna get into the rabbit and the Greeks.
Fair, yeah, that's a good point. So the human stuff of Pan's Labyrinth, I was gonna say it matters more than the art. It doesn't, because like Guillermo Del Toro in this particular film shows kind of like a mastery of making you feel and showing you some really beautiful stuff. There is some parts of the philosophy of this film that maybe not complex, but there's also a question for me, and I'll have this question a few different times as we talk about this. Like, how complex does it really need to be considered great? If maybe things are more simple than you think they are. So we're looking at this 20 years down the line. All right, this movie's about a fascist and his camp and a bunch of rebels, and this little girl comes with her mom who's having a baby for the fascist. I say it that way because I think it's very clear that she doesn't really want this baby that much. Like she does, but she doesn't. Like she says a whole bunch of times, the world is not fair. This isn't all what I want. It really is what it feels like. But I'm here,
Yeah.
and this is the way things are. So we got to get into it.
Complicit, but like not also like truly wanting it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it discusses kind of like a lot of the themes around that. One of the things that it does is it lets you know who's good and bad off the beat. So Captain Vidal, he's a bad dude. He's a fascist. He murders people for no real reason except for that he thinks he has the authority to make the call. And if you come into a situation where he may have to make the call. He always chooses the most brutal version of it,
Mm-hmm.
which is where one of the main chief complaints I see about this film all the time. And it's funny because I remember when this movie came out, this wasn't a complaint. But over the years, somehow we've become more sympathetic towards the villain characters. And everyone's like, well, Vidal is just cartoonishly evil. He's just an evil guy. There's nothing there that like gives him any justification for doing things except for he's just evil underneath it. I would argue there is one really big justification. I didn't really pick up on this until I watched the film this time. He wants to be remembered as a similar level of soldier as his dad.
Yeah.
And everything he does is to show how much of a badass soldier he is, so he can live up to the legend of his father, who died in a war. And that's the justification. I don't think you need more. I think in a world right now with a bunch of people who are doing a bunch of bad things, if you want to paint everything as morally gray, you may be looking in the wrong direction. I think it's okay to make this guy cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, I think that morally gray characters exist for a reason because that's how real life works. But when you're talking about fascist Nazi dictators in the 1940s, we don't have to talk about the moral gray. That's why we're in this whole slippery slope of our reality now. Like people are just purely, and especially because the way he's portrayed, we don't really get an insight into his psyche. We're just seeing him through the eyes of the characters around him, especially a 10-year-old girl. So like I think him having any like sort of one-dimensionalness or anything outside of that to his character would be just it would not work because he's supposed to be evil in one note because one he really is and two like this movie's not about him. He's a main character, but like we're not here to talk about his internal conflict or whatever.
Right, right. It's funny to me because I don't remember this at all being a topic of conversation when this film came out. When this film came out, it was like Captain Vidal is evil and he's great at being evil. Like he's a bad dude.
Yeah,
And I would agree he's one of the all time villains for that reason because
yeah,
they just paint him as like he'll kill you. It don't matter to him. It's not important. He's the punisher of the land essentially. You know, like he holds control of it, but only in the way that he wants to hurt it if it does something to inconvenience him.
yeah.
But yeah, now 20 years down the line, I'm reading all this stuff about how Captain Vidal should be given justifications for his actions. Like there's just things you can't justify away. So
It,
why even try?
and there's really no scenes in the movie that take me out of it. Like I talk about things being too convenient, but like I think his evil that he inflicts all feels, for lack of a better term, earned based on his character. Like I saw some criticisms online of like why he would choose to murder a specific character at the very end, but it's like he does not have any emotional attachment to this character. There's a whole onslaught of that opposing forces coming in, and there's chaos and violence. So him like killing this character would just get lost in the shuffle. There would be no attachment to him having killed this character. Like, and he hates her. Like he doesn't want her around. She does not serve any purpose except for maybe to become his like next wife or something. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Are we talking about when he? Because this is the spoiler heavy part.
yeah.
I'm gonna just say. Was that you talking about when he shoots Ophelia?
Yeah, I saw some criticism
Yeah.
online. Like, why would he hurt? Why would he want her around? Like, this is a yeah,
The interesting part for me is that he was more lenient with her than anyone else. If you
yeah,
watch anyone else in this movie, when they even kind of annoyed him, he hurt them. He knew he couldn't do that with her because her mom was ailing.
hmm
If she hadn't been like stressed out to the point of miscarriage, he probably would have hurt her anyway, I bet.
yeah,
But he couldn't because the mom's stress was the thing. It wasn't even like her objecting. It was that if her emotions got too strong, it would kill his baby.
yeah,
So it's really just attached to him, right? And finally, she's put like the mandrake root underneath the bed. He doesn't know what it is, but he hates witchcraft. Anything that suggests that he doesn't have control over it.
yeah,
And so he gets pissed at her. He finds out that she's been hiding the knowledge of someone subverting his, camp. And why would we expect him not to shoot her? Like she's
yeah,
got his kid.
yeah.
Like yeah, that's her little brother, but he doesn't see her as a person really.
No,
He sees her as an inconvenience.
exactly. And like, also, he's bleeding out. His son is in danger, and he's drunk, so he shoots her. Of course, he would. Like, whatever, like justification. He'd be like, oh, give me back my son. I'm gonna go inside. No.
Do you think that like one of the people who was at the fascist camp, like even if one of them, if he managed to make that out alive, You
Mhm.
think one of those soldiers would have been like, "Wow, you killed a little girl. I'm going to tell on you."
No, because they're all his subordinates.
Yeah, exactly. If they did, if they even thought of doing that, if he even thought they thought of doing that, he'd shoot him in the face and be like, "You were a rebel."
Yeah.
And that works for me because he's been shown that way. Like, really, the only emotional underplot that we have is how much he reveres and hates his dad.
Hmm.
He wants to be like his dad so much, but he clearly hates him a little bit because he denies his existence, or he denies the thing that we see is true. That he died with a stopwatch in his hand, and he stopped it right at the moment he died, so his son would know.
Uh,
And Vidal is attached to stopwatches in time and always
the
over the
control,
top
that
looking at
control
it.
piece. Yeah. And I think that, I think it speaks perhaps to the sociopathness of his character. But I think that he reveres his dad, but also he probably views his dad as a coward for dying. Like I don't think
Hmm.
he doesn't want to become like his dad. Like he does in the end when he asks this to stop his watch. But like I don't think his intent is to die like his dad did. I think he sees his dad as someone who was brave but also a coward because he died. He didn't complete his mission.
I would agree. I think one of the things, and this, we're not even in the fantasy parts of this film at all right now, but like one of the things that this movie, it struck me really strongly this time because I hadn't seen it this way at all before in the past. Maybe this is just an age thing. Was it kind of, this movie was so much more to me about the way you're remembered and like what society reveres than I thought it would be. It seems like everyone who was looking, I guess this is specifically Captain Vidal, but he was revering his dad. He was revering soldiers. They were revering war. And the rebellion at the end, when you mentioned that line, no, he won't even know your name. It's like the only way to heal this society that is so dark and is so twisted and so broken is to forget about the past and the glories of war
Hmm.
and just let that go. Forget it. And we see that Ophelia, when she finally passes away, you can claim that either she's imagining it or that this kingdom of glory that's given to her is how people will remember her,
Hmm.
right? Like she doesn't kill her little brother, despite the opportunity to do so, and with maybe some complicated parts of the story on whether or not that she actually can gain anything from doing such. But she's in the moment feels like she can gain something from killing her little brother, and she decides not to because he's innocent. And so she's remembered then kindly and wisely, and she's allowed to go to the kingdom of whatever that is. And like it's like the memory of how you acted is just as important as what you actually did in this movie. And I don't think I really got the idea of like what they're doing is going to affect future generations based on how they're passing down the history of it.
Yeah, this movie really does tell a story of generational trauma and the hope of being triumphant over that. Obviously with the war and the legacy of like this baby is now, the son of a fascist dictator, but now he's going to be raised by these forces that will show him, hopefully love and compassion, and he won't have to like be tied to his father ever because of that. So like that scene, and then her like returning home to her kingdom as Princess Moana, like it's about the generational trauma and the struggle and the wait because they've waited for her for years to come home, and now she's finally back. But it's about being triumphant in the face of that and not, you know, wallowing in the evils or the plight of the past. It's about like kind of overcoming that.
It's also like about disobeying, right? I think about like not going along with what you're being told to just because you're being told to. The doctor says as much, I guess, really. He's like, yeah, you're the sort of guy who'll obey just to obey. That's not me. I could never. And that it seems like the whole way throughout Ophelia, every time she's accomplishing something, it's because she's upsetting someone or saying no or doing the opposite of what they wanted her to do. And yet at the end, that's what ends up saving her brother, right?
Hmm.
Because who's to say that if her brother got stuck in that room alone with Captain Vidal out and about, like her brother would have died in a fire, maybe, right?
Very well could have,
So,
yeah.
so technically, she saved his life by taking him outdoors and then leading him towards where the rebellion was on accident, even. But that's the thing about disobeying is it ends up saving the innocent.
And it gives the opportunity to show her wisdom because the reason she's allowed to return to the kingdom is not because she completed all three of those tasks as she was told, but she used her own intuition in her own heart and her own wisdom to disobey at the end, and that disobedience is what allowed her to prove the final test.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It is it's such a heavy story because there's so much darkness laden throughout here, right? Like the fantastical stuff where it's like she made it in the end is still her dying.
Yeah.
It's not very happy. If you take the interpretation that all of the fantastical stuff was just in her imagination, then she's just a dead girl in a war of a lot of dead people, right? And that's pretty sad. Um, I'm sorry. I keep thinking about it. I don't really have a lot of reason to bring up emotional connection to it, but when Vidal beats the face off of the guy in the beginning of the Rabbit Hunter, right? Like it lets you know how evil Vidal is, and I think that's the whole purpose of it. How he's evil and he doesn't even check himself. He's just like, yeah, you are here in front of me. You're making me have to talk to you at night. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, and I'm gonna kill you with the wine bottle.
Yeah, because like in that moment, like also what is most important to him is his own ego and like showing his brutality in front of his men because these men are his
Mm-hmm.
subordinates and he like wants to show like if you fuck with me, like you're next. Like even though you're on my side, like it doesn't matter. This is who I can be in the moment at the drop of a hat. So I think his ego
Mm-hmm.
is like showing out there.
And he does that a few different times. Like I wonder if the violence of Vidal, because you're right, it is used as control. It is used as scaring tactics, right? But I wonder if it has a even deeper meaning past that, because he goes and he tortures the stutterer, which isn't how I prefer to remember him, but I don't remember his name off the top of my head. And then he goes to torture Mercedes, and Mercedes is just smart enough and wise enough to have been prepared for this sort of situation.
Hmm.
Um, but it's always just let me show you the evil I can do instead of let me show you how I can, make your world or life better.
Yeah.
Uh, Now I want to contrast that to the fantasy setting, but I don't know how. This is where like the complication between the philosophy of the movie comes in. Is that the fantasy setting, it makes sense and it frames the story in a really interesting and unique way to like kind of pull me in, but they don't necessarily intermingle 100% as far as the actual meaning of the story.
Well, I think what's interesting to me is that like obviously this fantasy world with the faun is a sense of escapism for Ophelia, but like up until the very end, we don't really know the true intentions of this fantasy world. Like, the faun character is a similar, in a sense, a similar kind of character as her stepfather, Captain Vidal, where he's like giving her all these orders and like follow this, and we need you. Like, it kind of mirrors the fascist regime in a sense of the reality she lives in, because like there's no like mention of the kingdom she's going to inherit. It's not inherently like a good moral world in a sense. Like we don't really know the intentions. It's really just about order and follow, like do these tasks and then we'll return to the kingdom. But like what is the message of the kingdom? Are they good people? We don't really know. And in the world that she lives in, like her Captain Vidal is just follow orders. Like this is control, control. And then in the reality, like their disobedience leads to the downfall of the fascist leaders because they're evil. And then the disobedience that Ophelia, you know, puts up to the faun when she doesn't kill her little brother, she's actually rewarded for that. So I think that, yeah, like we mentioned, like that theme of disobedience and not just following orders and standing up for what's right in this fantasy world, we learn at the end that it actually is a positive, morally good world. But like we don't know that until the very end. Like I think there's some confusion there about like what this world really represents. Is it just a mirror of the fascist regime that she lives under, or is it like something greater and for the greater good?
Do you think, and this is just going to be an opinion, I don't think there's a way to tell because I haven't read what Guillermo Del Toro has officially announced it, but like just as a viewer, do you then see this world as actually having existed?
Like in terms of like, is it just in her imagination or is it real?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me because at the very end, Captain Vidal cannot see the faun. He it looks like it appears to be in her imagination. But it also makes me wonder, like, if this world is real, but only the innocent can see it, and only the innocent can inherit it. So, like, in a sense, kind of like a similar kind of The Spirited Away, like where the parents aren't aware of this magical world. It's only the innocent little girl that goes there and sees it. And obviously, that world is also in Spirited Away is not. It's very morally gray, so it's not like all. It's not just about the innocent being able to see this positive world, but it's interesting. I think in the world that they live in Spain under this regime and all the horror and evil that's going on, it makes me wonder like if the message is that this world is real, but the people around it can't see because they're morally corrupted or something to that extent. It's like only the
I
very
can
pure
find it like
part.
even as simple as when she puts that stone into the statue, she unlocks it or something, right? Like,
Yeah,
but it's so hard because this is one that I don't really want to make a decision because in part of me I feel like it was just the pure escapism of the books, right? Like if you have a really active imagination, I could see how that would work. The parts that work against that for me are one, it would be incredibly sad. I hate that. But two, the mandrake root is actually the thing that makes me think that maybe it was real.
yeah.
Because
Because
otherwise, where did she get a mandrake root and why is she putting it underneath the bed? Because the mandrake root is such a weirdly specific thing.
I think that the captain of the doll finds the mandrake root and throws it into the fire, but I don't think he hears the screams, or I didn't pick up on that. Like that part of it was something he observed. I think he just sees this weird root in milk, and he's like, "You little witch, I'm gonna get rid of this shit." um, I think maybe a hole in the story of the fantasy world being real is at the end, like she goes to inherit her throne, and her mom is there, and I, I, I don't know if the man is her dad, the tailor,
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yeah.
but and I get they're like forced into a world against their will, but like why would the king and queen of this world be like tailors for the Nazis? Like they're not the most pure people. Like why are they the king and queen? That seems a little like
Yeah, and
yeah
I agree. That's ultimately what makes me feel like it isn't real at the end is that it's her mom and dad, right? So this is like her imagination finally reuniting her with the family that she remembers when she felt like happiness.
yeah
And even as I say that, that makes me more sad, because I'm like, it's depressing and it's a really dark idea that this fantastical world that she had isn't real, and that what we did see was just a little girl get shot and killed.
yeah.
You know, unfortunately, I can also see how that makes the movie as a tragedy a much stronger film because the tragedy is actually happening and it does reflect war. Little girls are killed all the time in war.
It's true, but I think the other side of that is that it's not all dark. Like there is still victory. Like they do murder Captain Vidal and they save his son and take him into hopefully a better world, or at least a morally better world. So there is some hope I think at the end there that they were able to like at least survive that excursion and remove the son from this evil dictator of his father. Like there's some positive there.
And I agree with that. Like one thing Guillermo Del Toro didn't do here, even in the saddest moments, is he didn't make the fascists seem like they win.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. Like when they're chasing down Mercedes on horse, and somehow she's able to run that much further than they are, even on horses. Like a little goofy, a little goofy, but okay. I appreciate it for my mental health. Thank you very much.
That's what I said when the film's a little too convenient at times. That scene in particular stood out. Like she not only escapes these horses, but also like all these men get shot up by the Allied forces at the same time. Like, oh, okay, that was
If they were able to do that, why didn't they just do that in the beginning? Why not just go run over the camp?
yeah,
Like what are we waiting for really here? Like
yeah,
the one thing I guess, and it's not a major part of this movie. It is and it isn't, right? Is war strategy. They show it couple different times, but we're never really let in on exactly why things are happening. They're just happening because one side is against the other.
yeah. And I think that maybe that could be a criticism, but at the same time, like Captain Vidal is obviously this evil, strong character, but maybe he just is stupid. Like we don't know if he's actually intelligent in terms of battle strategy. you know, we don't really know. He might just be going off pure arrogance in terms of his like mission.
Uh, and I would agree. I would actually say, yeah, I agree 100% because I think arrogance and aggressiveness are the two things he has going for him.
Yeah,
Like he's not making the best decisions when he's putting his neck out on the line, and he's like, it's okay, this is the best way to die, or it's the only decent way to die, even, and he's like just throwing his guys at the guys in the trees without thinking about it. He's got really cool glasses, but that doesn't make him smart, and I want to be clear about that. Like the little circle glasses that he wears, and it's like
yeah,
looks like some badass industrial music maker. It doesn't make him a smart dude. He's still a jerk, and he still only kind of knows strategy.
yeah. He kind of looks like Rivers Cuomo if he like fronted like a heavy metal industrial rock band with the
there's
glasses.
a there's I can't imagine Rivers Cuomo as a war general, but if I could, it'd be the stupidest thing.
I also
Yeah,
really liked
man.
I liked the scene. I sent it to you when I was watching it, but like when Mercedes is like cutting his lips, and it's like a Joker, the Dark Knight prequel. It's what it feels like because he's getting the same scars as the Joker. It's very funny.
Realistically, the makeup for him in if he had been Two Face at that point, it would have been the best looking Two Face in cinema history at this point.
Hmm.
Which might be sad for someone, but like make it easy.
Yeah,
Like all it takes is a nice little scar, and there you go. You don't have to pretend make his paint his face purple.
yeah. It's enough. He's got two faces now.
I you mentioned, and this is a inside with me and Willie. Willie texted a joke about a remake of America, and I won't leave the whole thing in there. I like that text a lot, but I did think about for a second afterwards. I'm like, what would an American remake of this movie look like? And my God, if they made this now, it would probably be one of the most dumb movies you could possibly watch.
I said this to Nick as a joke, and I this isn't even like me being political or drawing parallels in a sense. I just thought it'd be funny. I said I want to see an American remake of Pan's Labyrinth with the 10-year-old Baron Trump venturing into a magical sewer grate in the DC alley on the eve of his father's inauguration. Just because they're both 10 years
can
old and Baron was 10. And I was just like, it'd be really
you,
awful, but it'd be interesting.
can you imagine this film? This would be a very different movie, but it would also like the American folklore that you could build up around it. So Guillermo, get on that, please. I'm begging. I know you've done some real weird things since you did this.
Yeah, you could
Do
get
some more
weirder.
real weird things. Let's
Yeah.
go. And we'll talk more about that, I guess. The I don't know a lot. I know a little, but I don't know a lot about Mexican folklore or Spanish folklore in this case. Which I assume Guillermo del Toro is drawing off both him being a Mexican director and this movie being set in Spain. But I assume that these fairy tales are all based on real things. Like the mandrake root, I do believe is a known fairy tale of like it helps with people getting pregnant, but it's a really toxic root because it's part of the nightshade family. So it's one of those like it's a danger or a boon depending on how it's used and like the intentionality behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And we do kind of see that here. Like when it's burned with anger, it causes not miscarriage, it causes the death of the mother by delivery.
Mm-hmm.
But then we see when it's used with love, it brings healing and clarity. One thing I'm curious to know how you thought, and I when the faun, when Pan, whoever, gave Ophelia the mandrake root,
Mm-hmm.
did you sense a darker intention there?
I did.
Me too, and I'm wondering if that was like a mistake in tonality or if the whole mandrake root was meant simply to make the delivery happen.
No, I think that like you were saying, the mandrake root comes from a nightshade family, and its medicinal purposes, at least in folklore, and I mean maybe even in reality, is the mandrake root real? I don't. I think it is, right?
They say it's a root that dreamt of being human. I've never
Well,
seen
that
one,
part,
but
yeah.
if that's the case, it
Okay.
is okay. I think it is real. Um, let's
Well,
see. Yeah, mandrake root's real. They're very real.
and I think that the point that the faun was doing there was that like this mandrake root is very powerful, and it has purposes of both like positive outcomes if it's used with love, or negative outcomes if it's used with hate. And that's kind of part. I think it ties into the test part of like the sacrifice of her brother. Like he's getting this opportunity of the mandrake, and like obviously assisting with the delivery, but also like if she misuses it, then her brother's going to die anyway, and she'll fail the test. So I think it's kind of a precursor to that initial test of morality that he uses as the final step to get her to
Oh,
prove.
okay. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that was my take.
Yeah, I like that because I also no, this is good because I'd wondered about this when she's talking to the baby and she's talking about how much pain it's causing her mother. She doesn't seem mad at the baby, and I was always like, "That's a really mature take to
Mm-hmm.
take with this baby," because you'd think a little girl in her situation would be exceptionally already hateful of the little baby that is killing her mom,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But she doesn't. She's like, "Just come out, please. You're gonna love mom. Just stop hurting her."
Mm-hmm.
Please, it's gonna be great. Just come out. And I like this because you're right. Maybe if she had come at it at a different angle, the mandrake root would have killed the baby. And since she didn't, it instead did start healing them.
Yep, I think it's like an initial test.
Okay, I like that. That's good. I hadn't even thought about that. That's a nice little take.
Yeah.
Because that's what I got when I was watching him. I'm like, oh, you can feel kind of the evil finally oozing out, like the liar the lying of the faun was coming out in the scene where he's like, "Oh, whatever, man, I got this for you though. You
Yeah.
just put that under the
Well,
bed, it'll make things better."
and there is a darker tone to it for sure. Like I think that he's kind of reveling in like knowing more than she does, and like I think he's I don't think I think he's a morally great character. He's a bit of a trickster. Like I think he's a good person or whatever he is, good animal, but he definitely has a morally gray streak to him.
The feeling I get from him is that he's done this a lot of different times,
Yeah, a lot of different
and
tests for different girls.
he's okay with it failing.
Hmm.
He's not really that mad at it failing. He's like, haha, you screwed up. It's over now. But he's also like, I would like it to be real. Let's get through this thing. Also, my job is to test you. I have to trick you.
Hmm. I have to know your. I got the assumption, and maybe he even says this, but like this has happened. This test, Princess Moana has been gone for centuries, perhaps, and he's been waiting hundreds of years to find the right person. And other little girls have been through this test that have ventured into that forest or something. Like Ophelia is not the first.
I've even seen that like maybe there's a theory online that Mercedes was one of them. I don't know that I buy that. That's a weird one to me, but like that's one of the theories that I've seen.
Be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that's just because she's in the place. I The biggest plot hole here for me is that these fascists wouldn't have torn down these ruins right next to their house because they have no reverence for history.
That's yeah. It's interesting that the labyrinth like itself being there in place is weird. Like unless there was like some like iconography or something that they associated with their beliefs, but even that like it's not their creation. And then
Yeah,
yeah,
if it was like another historical group of people, I would believe in it. But I don't think the fascists care about the history at all. I think they would just be like, "This would be a great place for my motorcade pave
yeah.
over."
It's a very solid plot hole, honestly. Now that you mention it, like that really is. It doesn't like the complexity of destroying the underground tunnel, down the staircase to where the faun lives. I can see them leaving that just out of convenience. But like the labyrinth, like you don't have bulldozers back then. You can get rid of that shit. Just get some dynamite and blow it up. Like what?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, also, it would be a really good place for the rebels to hide.
Yeah,
That's what I would be worried about. Like, no one's going in there and checking it out daily. There's no guards around it or anything. So it just feels like why leave it?
yeah,
That's another one of those conveniences, I think.
yeah. Well said.
Um, I'm trying to think of any other specific parts in this to bring a lot of human emotion. I think the thing is that they're all very similar human emotions that pop out of it. Uh, and a lot of it's the artistry, which we'll get into, right? Because there's so much of this that is the music, the lighting, the framing. Guillermo Del Toro really had his thing. The fantasy world in this isn't super well explored, but I think that's fine because it's like imagination of a kid would also make it not super well explored. It
Exactly.
exists around the things they exist in their life. And I just love the idea that there's little magic things like the chalk drawing to get into a different world. Or there's no way that that can be real. And in this movie, it's very confusing a little bit because it does show that she used a chalk drawing to get out of her room and into Vidal's house,
Yeah,
or not his house, his room.
his room.
However, we don't know for sure that that's exactly how things went.
It's
But
interesting. I was gonna say it's interesting with the chalk and with the mandrake. Like these are fantastical elements, but Captain Vidal can still see them. He just can't see the faun.
right, and these are the things that like she could be drawing, and then the rest is imagination.
Yeah,
Like she could draw that, and then she could be just sitting there like. It's funny because you think the idea of like a kid just sitting there and spacing out and being in imagination land is like too over the top. You're like, the kid wouldn't. Where's the kid actually? If they draw that door and they're not going into the crazy pale man's room, It's like I don't know. Maybe I don't know. When I was a kid and I was reading books and stuff, I would like get up to go to the bathroom and think that like, what? Where am I? What is this, dude? Like I've been in a whole different world and I haven't moved an inch.
yeah,
Like I've just been sitting there in one spot going, whoa.
yeah. I had a very active imagination as a kid, and I could imagine myself conjuring, maybe not quite to this extent, but like conjuring some elements of imagination and fantasticalism. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The It's because I go back and forth. The frog or the toad in the tree and how dirty her dress got, because we see her take the dress off purposefully, right?
Yeah.
And that's great. That's wonderful. You think that would help? How did the dress get so dirty
I mean, maybe
even
she,
after taking off?
I mean, I think it wasn't raining. Maybe she like used it to like wipe off, her underdress that she was wearing. And I mean, maybe like she like did crawl into this tree trunk and get all muddy and then find this little toad and lick it and have a hallucinogenic episode. That's also quite possible.
It could be. It could be, right? Why not?
Yeah.
That tree was really cool.
hmm
And as a kid, I could see climbing into it and thinking, "Wow, this must be magic. It has to be."
Actually, one of my fun facts we'll get to in a bit is discussing that set, and I'm
Oh,
actually
so,
I'm
okay.
glad of the choice that they made.
Um, yeah. So really, where this leaves me is I just think about how in society, especially society that's based on war, which a lot of us live in societies that are based on war now. At least us in America, we do at the very moment specifically. We should stop looking at war in a reverential light and understand that the war was the part that made things harder and worse for a lot of people.
hmm
And maybe this I'm not going to make a friend with this take, I don't think, but maybe that the people who were fighters shouldn't be revered in the same way as the people who were creating and caring about each other.
On both sides, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, you definitely see that human element come across when the scenes of conflict aren't in play. Obviously, with the fascists, but also like additionally, like the moments of human elements come out, like especially in the scenes like with the doctor when he's caring for I forget if it's Mercedes' brother or lover, or I don't. Maybe there's two different guys. They kind of look similar.
I think it was her brother Pedro, but like it was filmed in a way that we wouldn't film a sibling relationship now
Okay,
in
there we go.
America.
Yeah, that you see those kind of. I think that's with those. That's when it kind of comes out, like um, that the people that succeed or thrive, or at least are inherit the kingdom in death, are the ones that are there to support one another, and like not even like this isn't even part of like a both sides argument whatsoever, but like the doctor, like he's so morally consistent that even though he hates Captain Fadal, like he's still there to care for his wife because that's his duty, and it involves caring for others, and like you know, this is outside completely outside of the political argument, but like both Fadal's wife and like his own people, like he treats with the same like appreciation and dedication and love and respect, I think. And I think that those characters like that kind of just suggests that human element of like this this human element of care and nurture exists completely outside of the realm of war and necessity. It's just like this
Mm-hmm.
is about human to human connection and care. And you see that same with like Mercedes and her acceptance of Ophelia and Ophelia's acceptance of her little brother. Like it's just about like putting aside this evil world we live in and just caring for one another as humans.
Agreed. And it's like where I find this to be more poignant even is when it is that Vidal saying, "Above me, there's no one." Right? He's holding the reins over judgment of everyone. Meanwhile, if all these other people are holding no reins of judgment, they're the ones who are creating the good in the world, and they're not the ones who are making the judgment. The person who's making the judgment is now hurting everybody around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's probably a more base level story than what we necessarily get. But I think like at the bottom of it, that's kind of what I feel came from me as meaning from my third watch of this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so
Um,
too.
do you have anything else to say about the human stuff, or you want to move on to some arts?
We can move on to the arts, I think.
Okay, so Igor, take us to the artistry of Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes, master.
He tried to come back, but he went. Okay, so Guillermo del Toro had previously made The Devil's Backbone. He had previously made oh shoot, I didn't write it down. So this is where I'm
Mimic,
having a hard time.
Mimic, and Hellboy.
He had made Mimic. Was that prior to this? That was prior to this. That was a '90s movie. And then
Yeah,
the other movie with Ron Perlman.
Hellboy.
Not, I don't think Hellboy. I think Hellboy was after this, unless I'm wrong, which
No,
I could be.
Hellboy was 2004, I think, and then
2004. So
Hellboy's
okay,
Golden Army was 2008. I think this was in
That's
between.
crazy. Okay, so I'm just misremembering completely Guillermo del Toro's career up to this point. So I do apologize for that. But yeah, so okay, I was gonna say before this he had made two, I think, more artistic is the word I'm looking for, movies. One of them being The Devil's Backbone, and the
Oh,
other
Chronos.
being Chronos. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah, that is
and
from.
those were kind of like two pretty like one was early '90s, the other one was early 2000s, and both of those were known for being pretty fantastical horror movies. So this isn't like completely out of his realm, but this is a whole different level for me. This is where, to me, if you're looking for where Guillermo del Toro really took control of the camera and the imagery and finally started creating like this kind of gothic sense that he has, Pan's Labyrinth was the step forward in that.
Step forward, yeah, from those, like the other movies had maybe had human elements. I have not seen The Devil's Backbone, but I'm reading the synopsis and it looks really good. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have seen that one. That one's a very they're both unique movies. I like The Devil's Backbone more than Chronos as far as like the actual story goes, because The Devil's Backbone, well, it feels like it fits into the same setting a little bit because it takes place during the Spanish Civil War.
Okay.
Um,
Also, he
and
did Blade too. What the
Chronos
fuck?
is,
I did not know that. Huh.
yeah, he had been around for a while. You know, he's got a very interesting look. And like I said, so first off, I'll just get the criticism out of the way, okay? This movie, early 2000s, earnestness, right? Movies now aren't made with the same level of earnestness, I don't think. And I'm using that word earnestness because it's the best word I know. Like, he's just being very on the front and he's presenting the emotions that he wants you to present. There's no subversion necessarily of those emotions.
Hmm.
I liken it to Sam Raimi at sometimes because it gets campy and it gets cheesy, you know? When you're trying to present a specific emotion and you're really leaning into it, sometimes you lean in just a little bit too hard. And that's where Guillermo del Toro falls sometimes for me. But other times he's just perfect.
Hmm.
Like, he straddles this line of perfect to too much. He's not a person who's like undercutting his emotions at all. He's not like, hey, let me kind of give you this feeling, but also grounded in reality. No, it is 100%. Here is the rain falling at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and it's dark, and this guy's wearing the cool glasses and running at you like Dark Man. But it looks well, and it does a good job. And as long as he manages to not make it snarky, he can keep it consistent. And that's the one thing I love, is that it never brings in that comedy in this movie. This
Yes,
movie doesn't have comedy, and if it did, boy, I think it would be a cheese fest.
it would. Yeah.
And that's the difference.
For me, what stands out, I think, the most about his work, and like obviously there's parts of this that are cheesy, but like not going back. This movie is balances tonal inconsistencies or tonal differences so well. I think to have a movie that's so fantastical and not kid friendly, but like kid alluring. Like it captures the imagination of a child, but also like has such dark themes of violence and fascist murder. I love movies that are tonally you have tonal differences like that, and I think this he does pull it off quite well. Like the cheesiness, I think, comes from, like you were saying, kind of like the overzealousness of portraying the emotions or whatever. But like that doesn't detract from the actual like base of these two very different tones just having this really perfect marriage, in my opinion. Like they don't take it, they don't take you out of the other at all, and it doesn't come across as clunky. I think both tones are handled very, very well.
Yeah, and I'll compare this directly to another one of his films that was very well lauded, The Shape of Water, right? Because The Shape of Water has that same, not same, because the level of violence in that movie is not nearly the
No.
same, but it exists underneath it because there's experiments going on, and then you have this kind of love story, right? Whereas in this film, the child imagination doesn't take away from the violence. In that film, the romance story does take away tonally, in my opinion, from the danger of the movie itself. So he does manage to, I think, strike a balance here really well that sometimes he overdoes otherwise.
Yeah. I can see that also perhaps a bit like in the new Frankenstein movie, where I really enjoyed seeing that in the theater. It was a great theater movie. I'm disappointed that it was also on Netflix at the same time because it's a movie that like I would not have enjoyed as much if I saw it just on Netflix. And that movie was also very tonally different, but and this is not to like get into nitpicky of his other films, but like parts of that movie dragged, where like some of the characters I just didn't care about, but when we get into the other tone of that movie in the second half, it really picks up for me. Well, this movie kind of goes back and forth between those two different tones and settings and characters, and I think it handles it a lot better.
Mm-hmm. What I love about the artistry of this movie is something that I love about quite a few things. We've been in a good period for this kind of dark fantasy that comes about. This ability to create these other worlds where the creatures feel like they've lived in them for a long time. Um,
Yes.
like the faun, he doesn't look like he's in perfect shape. He looks like he's been out there for decades. He's twitchy. He's got layers of stuff. He's nasty. He's dirty. He's still charming. So you still see how he can talk to the kids and get them to live him, but
Mhm.
he's not some spry young thing that's only been around for a minute. He's a creature that looks like he's been sitting in that spot for 400 years.
Yes.
And same with the toads, same with the fairies. They all have this like lived in creepiness about them, even if they are fantastical and beautiful at the same time.
Very lived in. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I also see that particularly with Igor's cousin. The I don't even know if he has a name. The white skinned guy,
I've been calling him Pale Man.
pale man. I heard that too. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah.
The really unfortunate thing, and this was true even then, guys. So I promise this isn't just based on recent things. Is that he looks so much like Mitch McConnell.
He does, and it's the eyes, honestly, too. The paleness, but also the eyes, and obviously, Pale Man's eyes are on his hands, like this, which I think is just. I don't even know if this is based on anything, but the choice to have his eyes in his hands was so fucking cool. I don't. I love that. But it's the eyes and kind of the droopiness of his face. I can see that.
It's just interesting because like even back then it was a joke because Mitch McConnell's been in our lives for a long time, and I just forget how much. And then as soon as you see him standing up, you're like, oh, whoa,
Well,
he's back. I forgot.
I'd say he's a little bit more limber and athletic than McConnell, but
Yeah. I'll give McConnell the benefit of the doubt of not ever actually eating babies that way, but
yeah, he's more of like a minced kind of guy, I think, like stew.
um I love like the backstories you're given in this through visual storytelling. The Pale Man being the place I bring this up because you get to see Ophelia looking at all the pictures of the Pale Man, right? And you're feeling in your own version of a fairy tale historical telling, right? You're like, okay, so this is the boogeyman that's known for eating kids at any point because they eat his food or they're selfish or they have wants and they disobey or whatever. You
Mm.
can kind of come up with any one of these things, but it lets you fill in those gaps yourself. That's what I think also lends to this feeling of a story you've heard before, with while it's also unique,
Yeah,
is that it lets you interject.
yeah, it doesn't it just shows you things, but it doesn't tell you how to feel or like what like you can draw conclusions, but it's not explicit. And I think this may have been intentional with the Pale Man in particular, because I was reading the Del Toro, his inclusion of that character was supposed to be a criticism of the Catholic Church, apparently, and the whole as we see in the pictures, and obviously with the attempt of Ophelia, is that he is eating babies, and like there's like he's supposed to be like a it's not allegory, words are escaping me, but like he's supposed to be like a stand-in for the Catholic Church in like terms of how
So
he eats babies and his pride and
okay.
gluttony.
And it's like if you give in to your base desires of just eating this food, then you will be damned, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe something like that.
Well,
That's okay. See, this is the thing I think with the film like this is knowing more about maybe the background and the reasoning with Guillermo del Toro might lead to a lot of different feelings on it.
mhm.
Because it's clearly all very well thought out. You can't see these set designs and think that Guillermo del Toro didn't specifically choose every single thing that you see in it.
I do appreciate though that it is subtle, like even if that criticism is loosely connected to his criticism of the church or whatever. Like at least in like we're not like he's not throwing that in our face and telling us how to feel like he does with other emotional sides of things. I think if he was trying to be too on the nose with his satirical or criticism of different political regimes or church leaders or whatever, that would be a little bit too much. But like it's very subtle, and I think that's smart.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I think letting the viewer have an opinion while also then having maybe let's like say a structure for the scene, right?
Yeah,
You give yourself a reason for it, so then you have a structure for it. Can help with those tonal thoughts. I mean, but imagine if Pale Man was wearing like the Pope's robe. That'd be pretty funny.
that would be funny, but it would be a little bit too much. Like, yeah. A little too on the nose, probably.
He'd be a good character in what is it? Did he do the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? He probably didn't. That probably wasn't him.
Del Toro. I think another director that's good did it. I could be
It
wrong.
felt like someone who was ripping off Del Toro, so maybe
Yeah, I liked that movie a lot as a kid. That's a good one. I don't know if it's actually. I don't know if it's good. I liked it as a kid.
same. Yeah, Sean
Yeah.
Connery in that movie was awesome, as I remember, and I'm not going to change that by watching it again. I don't need to do that.
Why? I just. Why did she eat the grapes?
Uh, well, here's my thought, because what I read is something I actually disagree with.
Hmm.
Okay, because what I read is that it was supposed to show that she was disobedient, right? She's curiously disobedient. And to me, I swear, and I need to go back and watch this little teeny section, this little
Hmm.
segment, that I heard like a music cue right before she decided to eat the grapes. And I
Hmm.
feel like she looked up and away from the camera for a second, and it feels like to me she was almost like tricked into eating the grapes. Like it
Hmm.
felt like there was like some sort of like bewitching nature to it, to where like the fairies are like, no, and we hadn't seen her be this way to the fairies before. She's like, shoo, get
Yeah.
out of here. It was completely out of character for her, for me, and it totally felt like she was bewitched for a second, or like put under a spell, or some version of fairy tale of that, where you're not making really the decision for yourself, you're making it because it's been placed in you.
Which would have made sense, but I wish that the faun or something would have explained like. I, I guess this could be like a spoiler, but because it's a new movie, but like if you know the Odyssey, you know the Odyssey. But like the scene of the sirens and attempting to trick people, like they're morally good people, but then they hear the sirens and they completely change their personality. If like he had explained to her like, hey, like they're gonna try and like bewitch you, or this pale man has powers and he's gonna try and trick you and get you to eat his food. Like if he just had explained that, then we could see it as not a plot hole, but like just like she's a little girl and she's usually manipulated. So like of course she's gonna eat some grapes if she doesn't have the willpower or the life experience to like transcend that temptation because she's just a little kid. That would explain like why she might have eaten the grapes because she's easily influenced just based on her who she is as a person. But there's no explanation of that. He just tells her not to do it, and then like you said, that theory online that this is her testing her disobedience. But like she was not disobedient to the fairies at all at any point, and it feels it takes me out of that scene. Like, it could have easily
I,
been explained, but it just wasn't.
I agree, and this is where, like I said, I swear, and if I might be filling this in with my head, and in which case I'm sorry. Apparently, my imagination exists in this too. I swear I heard like a little musical cue right before she looked away from the camera, and if that wasn't on purpose to show that something else is influencing her thoughts, that's the only thing I could get out of it. Because I immediately thought like she made it out, she almost did it perfectly, and then
Hmm.
by looking at the grapes for a little bit too long, it was just placed in her mind like, boom, you have to eat, you have to eat, you have to eat. Like we'll go back to the Odyssey. We're gonna ruin the Odyssey for everyone who hasn't watched it for you. When the people start eating the soup and then they can't stop, you know what I mean? It's not that they don't want to stop, it's that now they no longer can. It's like something
It's
got into her mind that said, you have to eat those grapes,
yeah.
you must.
It obviously reminds me a lot of Spirited Away too, where the parents also spoiling Spirited Away, but fuck, what the hell's wrong with you? So like the parents like are tempted by the food, but they go in like not knowing that the food is a trap. And also like I would believe that Chihiro would have eaten the food if she hadn't seen her parents turned into pigs. Like if she had gotten there first, like she also would have turned into a pig. But since Ophelia's character doesn't have that like um explanation or warning outside of what the faun said. He was just very like, don't do it. Like, of course, perhaps she'd be curious. There's like there's no visible repercussions for you know what could happen if you eat the food. I mean, I guess, but seeing the pale man, like I would not want to fuck with him. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that would have been enough for me not to eat anything, but uh, at least that makes a little more sense. So there's no
Yeah, I'm assuming it's some sort of
repercussions.
bewitching thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but it's an assumption. It really is. It's like you're not really given a lot of reasoning for it. Because yeah, if there's any part that feels really out of character for Ophelia, it's that. It
yeah.
is that. Because why? She's done really good at not caring about the rest. In this is in both the fantastical world and her real life. She's been disobedient, but she hasn't been outwardly. Stupid's going to be the wrong word to use here,
Just
but
like yeah,
like
immature.
non-caring,
Yeah. It,
like.
for me, it wasn't even eating the grapes that took me out. It was her being so dismissive of the fairies because these are the characters
Yeah,
that she looks up to the most.
Yeah, she loved the fairies. Like at that point, she really cared for the fairies, and she was excited, and she got the fairies killed.
Yeah,
And like the way she shoos them off doesn't feel like Ophelia. That's the thing to me. That's why I'll defend Bewitching, because it just feels so out of character that I can't believe they didn't do that on purpose.
yeah.
Like, yeah, she's not in control of her actions right this second.
If just like again, like you don't have to tell the audience everything, but even just like a line of dialogue from the faun ahead of time being like, they will attempt to trick you, you can't fall for it. That would have just landed a lot better for me.
Mm-hmm. Um, Trying to think of like a lot of other parts here. Okay, I'll specifically mention when I thought it felt Sam Raimi, so that way people can understand my criticism a little bit more. At the end, when she's running away with her brother, before we get to the penultimate scene, which is incredibly sad and dark, right? It shows the fawn face on the labyrinth, and they're
Mhm.
running through the darkness, and it just reminded me so much of early 2000s camera tricks. And I'm like, if you handle this wrong at all, you're gonna slide into camp so fast.
Mhm.
And he manages to steer clear of it, but I think just barely. Like that gothic sort of like we're headed to the final showdown right here, right now. This is what's going on was a little bit like heavy handed for me.
Yeah, that's when her dad is or her stepdad has began chasing her, and they're going towards the labyrinth. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That whole there's a lot of sequences towards like the bottom back third of the film where I felt like it started getting handled a little bit differently, and a lot of it was the dialogue, honestly, too, because the dialogue between Vidal and his paranoia sinking in started feeling very much more gossipy is the word, and I think that's done on purpose, but it also changed the tone of the movie for me for a minute in that middle like part where all of a sudden everyone's talking to each other about what could happen,
Yeah.
and you're seeing all these segues, and it's like, okay, this has changed for me from something that felt very fantastical to something that feels almost soap opera but with higher stakes.
Yeah, and again, like kind of too convenient too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, and I don't know exactly like what I'm trying to think of the right word to use to bring that criticism into play, but I don't know what it is, and it didn't really wreck the movie in any way, shape, or form. This is just like me being overly critical and watching a part of me like this tonally feels different from the rest, even though it visually looks the same.
Exactly, and it's explicitly like it's not like the contrast in tones between the fantastical world and the real world. It's like totally inconsistent with the real world. Like those tones
Mm-hmm.
are kind of like there's a clash there.
Yeah, it's like you're seeing Vidal being both more brutal than he's ever been and also more contemplative than he's ever been. Maybe him becoming a dad changed things for him. I don't know. But I wouldn't like if they did that also, I'd say you didn't explain that very well. Because
Yeah,
he's like, with Mercedes, he knows she had the key. He's not stupid, right? He directly questions her and then he says, watch out. He would never say watch out. He would have just beat her and shot her and been like, see you later, dude. Who cares? On
yeah.
to the next. Send me a new servant.
It's like I do wonder if there was some like I don't know their character like it's interesting because also with the doctor and like obviously perhaps he was a great doctor, but it seems like he was skeptical of the doctor the whole time, and I think he was skeptical of a lot of people because he was paranoid in general. But like, why didn't he just not bring in a different doctor as soon as he like saw the I guess like we don't really know until towards the end when he holds up the two vials that the doctor uses with the captive guy, and then also like when they find it in the woods with the lottery ticket. But it was like he seemed skeptical of the doctor, like, and the doctor also was not obedient. He was, more passive aggressive and just like outright disobedient. But it seems like there was some tension between him and the doctor even long before he shot the doctor. So it was like, why didn't you just get another servant? Like, why are you holding on to these people?
Right, it's like what portion of control does this make sense in, because
It,
you're also not
it,
necessarily in control of these people. The
yeah,
dinner, I think, was that moment when the doctor says, I'm like, we never would have chosen to be here, and then he's like, yeah, we would have, and he's
yeah,
so upset that anyone's making him look stupid for a second in front of his guests, which he's also telling them they don't get food anymore. uh, that, yeah, I wonder, and this is probably the part where I think Vidal as a mean character maybe could have had some interjections of that morally gray. You could have seen him actually having care or thought about these people, but since they don't
it,
at all, it
yeah,
feels weird that he's not just outright beating them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would have preferred that like more one-dimensional side of his character because there's no like allusion to him being morally gray. He's
Yeah,
not.
because like no,
Yeah,
like I think with Mercedes when he gives her the shot and he pours her the shot and he's gonna drink with her after he's like, you know, I have to question. There's somebody here. Sit down, please. You know, and he pours the shot. Like him maybe like smacking the bottle down because we already seen what he does with bottles
yeah,
and like being like, you have to drink this shot. I don't give a shit. Drink it. You know, would have made that interaction feel better. But it was almost like this half in, half out interaction where he's like, here's the shot. She doesn't drink it, and she walks away looking super upset. And he misses all of that despite being paranoid as hell.
yeah,
There's a missing feeling there for me.
yeah.
But I see, and I'm being mean to this movie right now, and it's just because the rest of it all works so well that I'm digging for things right now because like the framing on the shots is beautiful.
So good. There's some shots in there like I could give you so many examples, but one that stood out to me early on is when he beats the rabbit hunter, the wabbit hunter, with a bottle, and he did, and then he shoots him, and then there's a framing of like him standing over the guy's dead body, him aiming the gun, and then the moon in the background, and that is a great example of what I said earlier of like this film is so beautiful even in the darker scenes, and I don't just mean like violent dark, I mean like it's night out, it's blue and black, but it's still the colors pop so well, and the contrast of the white crescent moon is just like it, and the framing is it's just a beautiful shot. Yeah,
He's got really control over the whole picture.
yeah,
Um, the I really did love the introduction scenes in the forest with the car
hmm,
because that forest looked so explicitly magical. They did such a good job with just the floating particles everywhere, how
yeah. All the
green the grass was, the infinite layers of trees that were going about. That when she goes and finds something magical, it feels completely at place.
yes,
That feels perfect. And that's not because the story has given me that idea already. It's just because the imagery of that particular scene has painted magic into the world.
it just looks so cool, and like you said, it is so fantastical and magical, but it also is so grounded in a sense, and it doesn't look like it's in an alternative reality. It looks
Mm-hmm.
magical, but it's still so grounded in reality, and that blend of both sides just kind of exhibits how great the film is at portraying both the fantastical and the harsh realities of the world. Like it's simultaneous, but it's still done so well, even though those two tones are so contrasting. It's just like, yeah, the imagery is just like evokes so much of the core of the story and just ties in so well to the themes. It's just, yeah, it's just awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really liked the scene, and this felt so in place in 2006. Trust me, when Vidal is walking through that heavy rain, I mentioned it a few times because it was such a cool look. He's got those glasses on, and he's got his hair pat down, and he is just walking through the rain. Like that is a Batman moment for the villain of the movie,
Uh-huh.
which I think may be making a statement on violence in general, you know. But like the way he's walking through, like, oh, this guy could have directed Darkman. And I think that also might be a reason why I think of Sam Raimi is because that feels very superhero-y, like Crow or Darkman or one of the Nolan Batman films.
There is a movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but a Sam Raimi movie called The Gift. Have you seen that?
I don't know that I have.
It was. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it was pretty good, and it also was kind of supernatural. I don't want to spoil anything, but like, there's parts of it that were very like reality based in terms of the Sam Raimi movie. Like, it's not. It's very. It's different than just like it's not just like a story. But there are elements of it that are like kind of have that like not cheesy campy feel, but just kind of that Sam Raimi feeling. Even though it's different than a lot of his movies, it feels like a Sam Raimi movie.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's so hard for me to figure out exactly what that is. Like, is it the panning? Is it the transitions? But there's something in there that just connected to my brain in the same way, and I'm like, please just don't make a bad joke.
Yeah,
I know some. Like, here's going to be controversial take for no reason in this movie review. Sam Raimi for me is so hit and miss. Sometimes I think he might be one of the worst directors I've ever watched, and sometimes I think he's amazing. Right? Like Drag Me to Hell, I hated that movie. I have a review of that movie. You can go listen to it. I was very clear on that one too. I hated it. I know people love that movie, but that the mixture of this camera and camp really doesn't work. So got a little scared a few times watching this where I'm like, oh no, I'm making that connection, but he just managed to
does it.
avoid it.
But
I'm
well,
so
I think for
happy.
me the best example of that would just be Spider-Man 2 versus Spider-Man 3. Just enough said.
This is my issue with Sam Raimi in particular right now. What I'm going to keep bringing up is my kid got into Spider-Man a lot, and I rewatched the 3 Spider-Man movies, and to say they didn't age well would be an understatement. I actually think they might be bad movies.
Hmm, I wouldn't say that for
I,
Spider-Man 2. I would say Spider-Man 2 has some uh, fair take.
I mean, this is fair. I know that that's not a great take to take. I know Spider-Man 3 is definitely bad. Spider-Man 2 has some moments where I'm watching. I'm like, who put this on screen and thought this was the right way to do this? Maybe it's just also knowing too many things, too many years in the future about all these people. You know what I mean? Could be
That's
an
true.
issue too.
But I
Okay.
do. I was gonna say I do agree with you though that there are times with this, even if not just to pick on Sam Raimi, but there are times in this film where I reminded of other directors where it could have gone into the cheesy camp, like even with Hellboy, his prior film, like it could have faded into that, but I'm glad that it didn't. But you could tell like at points it could have, like it was getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And gosh, I swear I don't hate Sam Raimi. There are good movies that he's done. Okay, there are amazing films I've watched from Sam Raimi. There's just times where I'm like, who, why this man? Why are we doing this? And he's got a very distinct style, so whatever. It's not Michael Bay levels of really 90%
no,
of it's pretty awful. Okay, CGI is the last bit I wanted to mention here specifically. Is that the CGI to me feels very dated. And this is where I think me and Willie have different perspectives on it, and they're both it's just different times, right? This is like maybe the difference between our ages happening here a little bit. Is that for me, this feels like it's just old CGI, and some of the upscaling for 4K in particular was particularly poorly done. And I doubt that that's on the purpose of the scalers. That might just be the technology limitations of CGI from 2006. But like seeing the toad, seeing the faun in the background sometimes just looked so bad when the rest of the movie looks so good. It got very difficult for me.
yeah. I think that the CGI, like I was saying before, I think that like it looks dated, but not because it's cheap. I think there's a difference between being cheap and being dated, wherein like some movies nowadays have bad looking CGI, not because there's limitations of what they can do, but because they just kind of got lazy and maybe cut corners. And I can say I haven't seen a lot of MCU films recently, but there have been some I've seen where it's like there's some awesome action sequences, but then there's like this scene, I can't think of a great example, but like the CGI just like looks bad. And
Yeah, like the Flash baby scene.
I did see clips of that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, but with Pan's Labyrinth, like again, there is those parts where it's like this CGI or this sequence is so good, and then it looks bad in other places. It does seem to me that it's just the limitations of what they could do back then, and like obviously this film is very ambitious and has a lot of technical feats that were, you know, inspirational for the time, or like especially with the budget not being like a super huge Hollywood movie, like it was really impressive. But I think that they didn't come across as cheap or lazy. It just came across as like they were taking on a big project already, and they could only do like so much so perfectly. So it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of endearing in a sense to me. It does take me out of it a little bit at times, like the scene with the toad, uh, but it doesn't feel lazy.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think the where because I think of two movies when I think of bad CGI, right? And they are two different. So I think this is the line I'm hearing is that on one hand you have Lord of the Rings, right, which was like bad CGI, but also you didn't really get much better at that time.
Mm-hmm.
That was CGI with care, just not done with the limitations, or maybe Pirates of the Caribbean might even be a better version of that, where the CGI in that movie, even though it's old as all hell, kind of still holds up because you can follow the artistic direction and the care put into it. Or you can look at like the Scorpion King, done around the same time, but the fake rock looks so bad, so awful, and you just can't imagine why they did it this way. And the only answer could be because they wanted to get it done as cheaply as possible, as quick as possible.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the this movie falls into the former camp where like it doesn't it feels, maybe not deliberate, but it doesn't feel lazy. It just feels like they could only do so much and make it look so perfect. And like I think it stands out more because some of the scenes in the CGI and the set design are so perfect that it stands out more because the scenes that don't look as good.
I would agree. I think the Pale Man scene is what really wrecks the rest of it for me, because the Pale Man scene looks so good,
Yeah.
and even with the CGI fairies floating around, it still looks so good. Where then when you see the Toad scene, which also looks really great, And the
Yeah.
toad's not even necessarily bad. It just is off-putting being so obviously a computer-generated image in such an obviously physical set. And then the toad burps out his egg sac or whatever that is, his stomach or whatever, and that's a real practical effect.
Hmm.
And you throw me a practical effect coming out of a CGI effect, and oh boy, do I just get like the ick somewhere inside. I'm like, I don't. This doesn't work for me.
Yeah, and I think the CGI stood out to me as being poor at the very end, like that dream sequence in the throne. It's just like, okay, this looks bad. You could have done that with like puppets or like maybe not puppets, but like you didn't really have to use CGI for that scene, and I think it still would have looked cool.
I do love the idea of Jim Henson doing that final scene though. That'd be fucking
Well, I
cool.
mentioned puppets because it's on my mind because the again we'll go back to the new Odyssey again, not really a spoiler, but apparently the Cyclops in that movie is a puppet.
That Yeah, and that Cyclops is really cool.
It looks
Actually, the design
fucking
on that
cool.
thing is
Yeah,
rad.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like you can, and the movie also had great CGI. So like not overdoing it with CGI and using CGI more intentionally can work well. But in scenes where the CGI is dated, like with the CGI frog versus the cool effect of the prop of the blob and the key, like it's a delicate balance, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess I'll just say for the final thing, I really do want to get across that the artistry in this movie is something to be seen. I may have said a lot of bad things about it throughout this review here, but what I really want to get at is that I think that it is so incredibly unique and well done. This
Hmm.
is one of those blends of movies that you haven't seen and you really can't capture it if you're a different person. You can attempt to emulate it, but this was a creation of Guillermo Del Toro's and it comes across the screen as such. And it's truly a time where cinema feels pretty magical. You're in someone else's imagination for 90% of this movie, like even if it is based in reality and based in, you can feel that Guillermo del Toro is bringing you into this world that he's written down.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. Hear
It
my criticisms, don't hear me criticizing it.
This is the kind of movie where like yeah, I do have some criticisms, but like it's the kind of movie that like just makes me excited that I live in a world where movies exist. Like this is a movie that like it's like fuck yeah, I love film, I love cinema,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not
Mm-hmm.
like the best movie I've ever seen. But if someone told me like, oh, my favorite movie's Pan's Labyrinth, I'd be like, you know what, hell yeah, that movie's fucking awesome. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad it exists and it's so creative. Like I can totally get that. It's not even that
It,
parts of the film work for me. It's just like I do maybe have some criticisms, but like I'm just so glad this movie exists. Like just straight up.
Yeah, exactly. Like before being asked to talk about it, I don't think anyone who asked me about Pan's Labyrinth, I've always just said that's a sick movie. You should watch it. It's a good one.
Mm.
And I at the end I'd like to leave it that way. But instead I'm going to ask you this, Willie. What's the shot or moment that you'll remember a year from now?
I talked about it already, and I this is kind of showcasing the blend of like how it can be kind of campy and convenient, but I still really enjoy it. It's just the fucking scene after Captain Vidal comes out and he like is surrounded by the rebel forces, and he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna break my stopwatch and please tell my son when and where I died. And she says, she's like, no, he won't even know your name. And then she blows his brains out. Like nothing like original or unique about that, but it's so just I just love that. Fucking love that scene. Besides that, the whole entire Pale Man sequence, I'll never forget. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think for the specific level of brutality that it shows, the rabbit hunter scene is going to stick with me for a while. Because it's so mean. Like, not even just that he kills the guy with the bottle in such a brutal way, but he does it in front of his dad over something that they're telling the truth about.
Mm-hmm.
Like the careless violence of it, and then also then blame it on someone else who didn't actually do that thing, but just asked him to come out here and talk to these dudes.
Yeah.
Like it's just the violence and the brutality there of like someone who believes that they are owed everything in the world, they own everything in the world.
And even any minor inconvenience outside, like that disrupts their control, even for a second, is warrant of like graphic violence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Other than that, yeah, the Pale Man scene, I think that's really well known for a reason because it's really cool looking. Just wild. Uh, like I just remember the Pale Man eating the fairies, and like when it happened again, I'm like, I forgot how visceral that was. Like you can see
Yeah.
their guts getting pulled out a little bit. Like, damn, he really made you feel for those fairies for a second.
Yeah. And just yeah. And again, I just love that their decision to have his eyes be on his hands. I don't even know why I find that so cool. I think the actor that plays Pale Man, I think Doug Jones is his name. He also plays the Faun. Is a mime actor in real life, and that kind of like hand incorporating that motion of the body into his like ability to see and interact is kind of unique, and it kind of reminds me of like a mime.
Yeah, and oh man, it's so cool. Doug Jones. Okay, I swear I've heard that name before, and I realized it's because that's the name of a guy from the Twin Peaks remake series or resurrection.
He's
Dougie Jones.
Doug Jones was also in Hellboy, and I want to say he was maybe in Shape of Water or Nightmare Alley. He's been in a few Del Toro films.
Yeah, he's in The Shape of Water. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is the same guy. So he's been
Oh,
doing the
he
thing.
plays um, the romantic lead to Sally Hawkins' character in The Shape of Water.
He was also in Crimson Peak as Edith's mother. It's good. We're there. Yeah, he's been in a billion things. Okay, so he's a creep guy. You've seen him. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You definitely have 100%. Okay, so Igor, take us to the 5 things you didn't know about Pan's Labyrinth.
Yes, master.
He's hanging around this time. Okay, we're gonna get him off the screen for us. Please see you later, Igor. We'll be back. So the 5 things you likely did not know about Pan's Labyrinth. Willie, since you have selected this film, go ahead and get us started off here.
Yeah, all right. So first one. So Guillermo Del Toro had initially planned to cast the actress slash role of Ophelia to be someone a couple years younger, but during the test screenings, they had a lot of test screenings. He, his wife, and members of the crew were completely blown away by Ivana Bacaro, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, audition, that he knew that he wanted her to be Ophelia, even though she was, I believe, 10 or 11 and the character was supposed to be 8 or 9. And then Del Toro gave Bacaro a lot of comic books and fairy tales to kind of just, her homework was basically just to like read up on comics and fairy tales and kind of immerse herself in the fantasy world. Like that was what he wanted. Her audition and performance was already so great. He just wanted her to like kind of get captivated by this a fantastical kind of world.
She did such a good job acting this movie out too. Like for a person of her age to be able to just kind of display what she did without ever. I don't think her acting ever went into the overacting scenario
No,
either.
it did not.
Like she did a great job. Like okay, this is something that probably you wouldn't have picked up on, especially if you don't speak Spanish, or if you've never been to Spain, or you don't understand the intricacies of language, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it does provide a little bit of depth to Captain Vidal's character here. In Spanish, when addressing 2 or more women, you would say bienvenidas. Okay? All right. The presence of any male would require the use of bienvenidos because, you're now addressing a man instead of the women. They don't get at me for the language, okay? I promise you. When Captain Vidal welcomes Ophelia and her pregnant mother, you know what he says? He says, bienvenidos. And it was very purposeful because he is not showing interest in the women who are showing up. He is showing interest in his unborn son. So just to make you hate this man a little bit more, there were linguistics in play as well to show how much he disrespects everyone that is not him.
And that's his very first interaction in the entire movie. I think that's a great inclusion that they just decided to go that way.
So it's like such a little thing, but it's so like, okay, all right, you knew immediately from this guy, he actually doesn't care about them. And you do learn that over the way he acts. He's like, I don't even need to be around you people. Who cares? You just give me my boy. But yeah, you start off and he's like, you're not even people. Where's my son?
So the set during the frog scene was redesigned from its initial plan. I saw a couple conflicting takes of what it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like a palace setup, like a castle thing in the woods, or some other just grander, larger scale set. I couldn't figure out exactly what the initial plan was, but the initial set made the frog appear less intimidating due to the scope and size of the set. So Del Toro and the production decided they to change it to the kind of tree trunk sequence. So it was changed to make it appear not only more claustrophobic and tense, but also to make the frog appear larger and more intimidating.
That's really cool. And it's also really smart for him to be able to, or be willing to go back and change something like that and not get married to the idea that he had put forward and instead get married to the idea that he had originally. You know, like, oh, this didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Whoever the production company that ultimately funded this, also good job on you guys for listening and allowing for reshoots for things like that.
Yeah.
I know that's not always the truth. Um, the next one I got in Mexico, the film was released under its Spanish title, which translates to "The Labyrinth of the Faun." Uh, so in Mexico, they see the Labyrinth of the Faun, and they think, "Hey, that sounds like a kids movie." So a lot of people took their little kids to go see this movie because fantasy movie called The Labyrinth of the Faun. That sounds awesome, made by a Mexican director. Let's get into it. That's great. Yeah, well, because of the graphic violence that was in the film, it got added to all the film posters as a gigantic warning down there. Like, warning, there's graphic violence in this movie. And it even made news in Spain not to take your kids to this movie because it's a graphically violent movie. So I think the idea of making a fantasy movie for adults at this time, still in 2006, was pretty unheard of. Not unheard of. That's not really what I mean to say, but like making one that looked fantastical
Yeah,
and then making it only for adults was a kind of more of a risky decision than you'd guess now.
I've heard like what's the American example of that? I've heard a couple instances with Logan and Deadpool, like being R-rated comic book movies, and parents taking their kids to see it, and them not being like the Avengers.
Well, I can imagine, like, for me, I went to see Iron Claw completely unknowing of all of the history behind it, and I could
Oh,
see taking like kids who love wrestling to that movie and
oh
then being
God.
like, "Whoa, no, oh no, what have I done?"
Yeah, no. Um, my last fun fact. So, a scene in the film featuring a violent assault with a glass bottle, which we talked about a lot, was inspired by a real life incident Del Toro experienced as a youth in Guadalajara, Mexico, where apparently him and his friend got into a street fight, and his friend was beaten with a glass bottle repeatedly. And what stood out to Del Toro was that the bottle was not breaking, and because the bottle wasn't breaking, his friend just kept getting beaten with the bottle. I didn't see a lot of elaboration on that. It was an interview where he talked about this street fight he encountered with his friend.
Jesus.
So he also grew up in Guadalajara, Mexico. So that's I'm sure a great place to grow up in as a kid.
Man, that's one of those things. Like, you see it used as a weapon in movies, and it always breaks, and it didn't break, right? Because
Yeah.
that's probably more realistic. If you don't hit it the right way, it doesn't break, and then it's just a real ass weapon.
Yep.
It's just a club.
Yeah.
Turns out. Oh well, I'm sorry, Guillermo. This guy might be have a lot more darker thoughts than we know because of some traumas.
Yeah.
I'm not here to diagnose.
You look up his just even his Wikipedia. He's had some very interesting youth, both positive and negative. It appears.
This guy, no wonder he's like making video games and stuff of violence. You know what I mean? Okay, so Igor, take us to the final section.
Yes, master.
Okay, Willie, I'm gonna let you start here. Okay, so this simple question for the final section: how does this movie stay with you after the credits roll? What is your ultimate, like? What does it linger? How does it linger?
I've talked a lot about before how I two types of movies I really enjoy or that stand out to me are ones that have maybe first perhaps it may be more true in books and other media, but like I really like morally great characters. We didn't really have a whole lot of that in this, but I like morally great characters and I like movies that have contrasting tones that don't clash and instead are harmonious and bring out feelings of different kinds of feelings. And I love that this movie was able to balance both the magical whimsy and unknown and creativity of this fantastical world with the harsh, brutal violence of living under this fascist regime in the 40s. And I'm just really impressed with how Del Toro was able to create a marriage of these two tones and these two worlds, and how it just stands out beautifully. It just works so well in so many ways. And I just love the creativity and the originality of this film, even though it pulls from other folklore, Mexican folklore, and perhaps even other stories and movies. It's still just such a unique tale, and it's so emotionally captivating while being so beautiful in its imagery. I think it's just the uniqueness and the marriage of tones that works so well will stand out to me.
Yeah, I think that's well said. For me, um, this first one's like not necessarily like the full idea, but I want to say like we need more movies that remind us that good and evil do exist. Like morally gray is important, but sometimes it is important also to remember that certain ideals are just evil within themselves and always
Hmm.
lead to certain things. And judging things by not being morally gray, I think, is like too quick and rash a judgment. Even if you're then doing it on the half of saying the other person made too quick and rash a judgment, maybe just understand what the story's trying to tell you first.
Yeah, I
Um,
like that.
yeah, it's funny. I just reading about it again as an adult and then seeing the movie and being like, yeah, I don't remember that being an issue at all when the movie came out. Like I remember being like, yeah, this makes sense. Back then we were watching movies where they're killing Nazis all the time. You
Yeah,
know,
it wasn't controversial.
no, it was just a thing. And how what it really speaks to me for is I think that looking into the past and diving into fairy tales and folklore and things and modernizing the messaging still works, and it shows how a lot of these are humanistic values that we can kind of carry forward into the future, and there's no reason to abandon the storytelling devices. Instead, we
Hmm.
can adapt them to be more modern. And this is one of those movies that even 20 years ago, so I'm saying more modern from 20 years ago, showed that like that merge of folklore and fairy tale with new morality can still be thought provoking, feeling provoking, emotion provoking, and it still reaches us in a place where I think only stories are capable of reaching us.
Well said. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's really good at it. So there's a reason why Guillermo del Toro's around, and I still wish he would make In the Mouth of Madness like he promised he'd do back around this time. Guillermo, come on, buddy,
Was it?
pal.
Was it? There was another movie he was working on for like a really long time that never saw came to fruition. Was it him I'm thinking of, or was it Peter Jackson gonna like make a Halo movie? Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I think that might be it.
Yeah.
I know that Guillermo was working, and it was in, as far as I remember, it was in production at some point of In the Mouth of Madness. Then it got shelved because he couldn't do it correctly,
Hmm.
which no one really has been able to. I love the John Carpenter movie, but it has almost nothing to do with the actual story that H.P. Lovecraft wrote. Um, but God, I'd love to see Guillermo del Toro take a whack at it because of the character and creature designs that he's possible of. He was also working with Kojima. Oh man, that's Hideo Kojima
Hmm.
from video games like Metal Gear Solid guy. He was trying to do Silent Hills with him, and that never came to fruition because of some Sony fallout.
Oh, wasn't there a movie he was working on that like also like kind of like I know Peter Jackson was working on a Halo movie and that kind of became District 9, and then I think Del Toro was working on a movie that kind of became Pacific Rim. Maybe I feel like Pacific Rim was like birthed from another idea and then kind of became Pacific Rim, but I don't know.
That feels like that could be right, and especially when it's related to video games, Pacific Rim feels like
Yeah,
it fit right in.
yeah.
So
I'd
yeah,
like to see Del Toro like he did I think a really good job with Frankenstein. I'd like to see him like make like a modern day Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or something like that. Maybe not like modern day, but like I can see him having fun with that.
what I want to see, because I think that's a great idea of it. I wouldn't really mind if he took any of these like old Gothic tales, but instead of doing it like him and Eggers were doing it last year or the
Hmm.
last couple of years, actually modernize them. You can still give me the Gothic styles, but don't give me the exact same story. Like let's push some limits here, even within the storytelling and visualness of it. Like you guys are capable of it. I know you are. I've seen movies like Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah,
Like push me a little bit.
and something like modernized, but like not the bride, like something like that. I did not like that
Yeah,
movie.
no, like keep the visual and tonal style. I'm okay with that, and then just like make it so it applies more to modern humanity. Because I like I said with these stories, you can add in some modern touches, and they still apply because they're so based on just what's inside of us, what makes us.
Yeah,
Use that idea, but then don't just go like, now let me remake that story to T for T. Like
use your own like
I might be
creativity.
getting more mad at Eggers at this than
Yeah,
Guillermo del Toro or whatever.
I'm excited for the his werewolf movie though.
Yeah. Well, you hold out excitement because the imagery is fantastic,
Yeah.
right? I just hope the story can live. Anyway, neither here nor there. Sorry, Guillermo. This isn't about you right now. So, Willie, thank you so much for joining me on this one. Thanks for choosing the movie. We'll talk again soon. Hey, if you like listening to Willie talk every Wednesday, we're live at night on the Double Doinkers podcast talking about fantasy football. So let's talk about intersectionality. If you like movies, you like football, come check out Double Doinkers football. Me and Willie are hosting, and we're live, so you can come in and ask us questions. Even I mean, like if you pop into that stream and you're like, "Well, what do you think Guillermo del Toro would think about Jameer Gibbs?" I'll answer that question. I'll answer pretty earnestly.
Yeah, I can answer it now. I think he'd be very like inspired by Jameer Gibbs's kind of like hybrid role of a receiver and a running back, and almost in a Frankenstein-esque type way. And I think he would be intrigued. I think he'd pick him
See,
101.
see, that's wonderful. As a matter of fact, please come in and ask these questions. uh, the next movie you'll see on this podcast is As Above, So Below. That is the French. So I don't think the movie's actually French, but it's set in France.
Sorry, speaking French there for a second.
Tried to. The tongue was trying to do everything it could to let it out, and I'm like, no, hold back. It's in the catacombs of France. Anyway, you'll know the movie if you heard it. If you haven't, go check it out. And then you'll get to watch the review later with us. Me and Adam are talking about it. But until then, see you next time. And go ahead. Don't be afraid. This is the only decent way to die. Igor in that podcast.
Goodbye, Master.
Additional